What is going on, everybody? This is Dr. Holly Mays with this edition of Daily Manna. I am excited to be with you guys this morning, man. Oh my God, we got a great show for you guys. Listen, I'm glad you guys showed up this morning, man. Listen, I encourage you to share this. I encourage you to invite your friends, family members to this show. This is going to be a great show on today. Listen, we are still dealing with uh, preparing to change the narrative, but this is part two. Yesterday we went over some things, man, and it was, man, we had a good time yesterday. We had a good time, but I want to really focus on the narrative today. I really want to focus on what we need to do to fix, change, and to move forward from some of the things that are going on. So I want to encourage you, but I got a guest this morning. I got a guest this morning. And my guest this morning, man, real good friend of mine. He is a co-host on Dallas Confidential TV. Man, one of the sharpest brothers, man, I know. Especially when it comes to some of the topics that we're talking about. But man, I'm excited. Before I do anything, guys, make sure you are following us on Bishop Chronicles Podcast on Facebook, not Instagram, well, Instagram and YouTube. Make sure that you guys are linking up with us. Also, I want you guys to prepare for my new talk show. I wish I had like some horns where it go dun 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 dun, something like that, but it don't. But I don't. So y'all bear with me. But my new talk show is going to be called Dr. Holly Mays Uncut. Man, we're going to be talking about everything. So all the stuff I'm talking about now on Daily Man and all that, listen, we're going to expound on. We're going to have some wonderful guests. We're going to have some wonderful shows. We're going to be talking about some wonderful topics. So I want you guys to be a part of that, okay? But listen, without further ado, listen, I want to introduce to some and, introduce to others my real good friend, my co-host for the day for the first 10, 15 minutes of our show, Mr. Ryan Russell. Ryan, are you on?
Hey, what's going on, Holly? Hey, I'm here.
Hey, what's going on, man? Listen, man, I appreciate you so much. Listen, if y'all don't know, Ryan works for the government. Not what y'all think, okay? He don't work for. He not DEA or nothing like that. He don't work for the White House, but well, he kind of do. I guess you kind of do, don't you?
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah, in a way. Okay, cool. But he's on another different end of the spectrum. I mean, he's a father. He's a husband. Man, he's a very thought-provoking guy, man. I'm honored to talk about this subject with him. But Ron, real quickly, man, we are talking about preparing to change the narrative, and one of the things that we were talking about when it talks about preparing to change the narrative. Is we are dealing with the propaganda, what's going on in today's time, and especially within the past 2 or 3 weeks. So listen, real quickly, I just want to get your take on the George Floyd situation, the Ahmaud Arbery situation. What is your viewpoint? What are you seeing out there?
Right now, man, I mean, honestly, it's overwhelming because yesterday I seen something that I ain't gonna lie, showed me how impactful this whole situation is, in which I saw someone put a post from New Zealand where the whole crowd was just marching, you know, I can't breathe, Black Lives Matter. And
Right.
it almost put me to tears to where something we've been describing for years and years and years, not just validation, but just to see something like that to where we know we matter, but now it's like our voice is finally being heard. It's like a bittersweet situation where we know it. Now we get an acknowledgement from not just the media and reporters, but now all across the world.
Right.
You can't deny the truth that how much we've been affected by this for years and years and years, and what we've been saying. You haven't heard us, but now the world heard us. It's almost like, how can you live in a place that doesn't hear your voice where you live, but
Right.
all around the world, they hear you. They don't even live here and don't even know how much we live this on a day-to-day basis. So it was verification of validation that, man, I'm glad I lived this long to at least see something like this come to fruition. And I think really we need to take advantage of this because we don't know when we will have this type of opportunity where the ball is literally in our court, and depending on how we, control the narrative and just be responsible, with great responsibility comes great adversity, great obstacles. We can do almost anything being in this position right now.
Right. Well, here's the thing, man. So I want to talk a little bit about teaching on how to look at the situation because, Ryan, you are within your own right a historian. I have sat on the panel with you. I've sat on some shows with you, and man, just to hear you talk about where we come from as a culture is phenomenal, man. To talk about some things. So do me a favor, man. So let's. I want the people to gain an understanding of the history of where we come from as it pertains to protesting, as it pertains to fighting this race issue. Um, let's talk about that for just a sec.
Well, fighting a race issue is usually dealing with a war or basically with knowing yourself or loving or respecting yourself. And some of us, just in black community, for years, generations, we were stripped of our identity and almost torn down based upon someone else's ideology of ourselves. So they thought we were slaves, savages, came to Africa with the Ivory Coast, came across the Atlantic Ocean, which for me, when they talk about the Bermuda Triangle trade was from us going to the Caribbeans, being used as slaves to make rum, shipped to America as cotton slaves, and then going back to Africa. So that's really the Bermuda Triangle, so to speak, and
Right.
then coming across here and having us assimilate as only being less than human, and they use the studs to breed more slaves, use the women as they wish, and it all boils down to having a sense of self. So once we have a sense of how far we've come, how many people had to struggle just for us to get here, we have a true appreciation for it. And then I guess stepping into now, that is our foundation. And no matter who comes at you questioning your identity, like right now, I look at these black Republicans that used to be all pro Donald Trump, so to speak, and now you can see how people will sway depending on which way the wind blows.
Right.
And I used to get angry at these people, but now it's like I feel so empowered that now we have to come together collectively as a unit and not tear down each other, but uplift each other and, have a strategy on not what to do, but almost like these are our demands, and
Right.
we won't take nothing less than it.
So you know what, Ryan, and I'm glad you mentioned that because here's the deal. The reason why I wanted you to expound on that is because one of the things that we're going to be talking about in this show is, and I don't mean this to sound facetious, but do young folks or millennials have the right to be this angry? And when I ask that question, I wonder if they have the brief foundation or structure that you just named. Now that was basic. What you just said was basic. It was yeah, you got to do a little bit of digging to understand that, especially dealing with the Bermuda Triangle. But it was basic information. But I wonder, do they have that type of information? Because what I'm seeing, man, and we're talking about teaching how to look at this with another understanding, another perspective. Slavery was a long time ago, 1618. It was a long time ago, and we've progressed since then. But I wonder, have our mentality progressed to a point that we can now rationalize and think our way into another perspective? Because it seems like when I look at certain things, when I look at riots, when I look at, we still carry the same perspective that we had in the 60s. And I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying, are we smart enough now to think differently? Do you think this is a way that I mean, is there a way that we could go about this a different way, or a more rational way? And my wife told me something. I know there's a couple things I'm throwing out there, but my wife said something, and I got to throw this out there. She said, "Well, babe, there are some people doing something, just not on your side." And I said, "Oh, okay, cool. Cool. Because I would like to hook up. I would like to hook up with those people and find out what the agenda is, what the strategy is,
Yeah.
the structure. But do you think that we've evolved enough to say, okay, well, listen, protest is out the window. We don't really. I think they've heard enough. I mean, if you're talking about a police chief or sheriff, sheriff and all them, those guys are probably pushing late, early 50s, late 50s, something like that. They were around long enough to understand the narrative, to understand what we're going through and what we see. So now is that outdated? Are we at another level now? Like Jay Z said, we know the problem. We know the problem.
Hmm.
So now, what are we going to do? Are we there, or are we
Yeah.
still at the protest stage? What do you think?
I think right now, I think we should be a lot further now as far as the elevation of using protest as a means of hearing our voices heard. Which, even with me, we had in LA the Watts riot back in the 60s, and then Detroit had riots back in the 60s and 50s, and then you go way, way back. Prior to that, our riots was about movements, but prior to that, we had the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing back in 1921,
Right.
but that wasn't about having your voice heard. That was about stripping us down to lower than, stay in your place mentality. And I think most of it is just a fear of us doing the same that has been done to us by the oppressors, whether it be black, whether it be Indians, because Indians and Oklahomans had slaves. So there was no limitation to slavery. It was just those who took advantage of it. And I think for us, collectively, I think we should have come a lot longer, but I don't think it's our fault. I think it's been systematic things in place to where, from, you can look at American Gangster with Frank Lucas. He was ingenious, but his method that he used to
Yeah, that
make
was.
money and be recognized was through the drug game. So what if he had used that same mentality as politics or political influence, where I've seen a lot of people switch from the street game to a more legalized version of it, which is business or politics, and it's more uplifting than, looking at it as being negative. And now with social media, I think the millennials, they have an appreciation of it based on what they can research. But
Right.
kind of like with Jews, kind of like with regular Americans, you can be Caucasian, European, whatever. They have a sense of their history where Jewish, I look at people where they do their ceremonial, I forgot what it's called, but I guess not Kabbalah, but they have ceremonies that are traditional and it's passed down from generation to
Like
generation.
bar. You talking about like bar
And
mitzvahs or something?
yeah, kind of like bar mitzvah, where they have a cultural thing, and the younger generation appreciates the elders
Right.
because it's being passed down onto them. And it goes back again with a sense of self, where I think we've been more under attack to strip us from our identity and also use us based upon, if we do good in sports, if we do good as criminals, crackheads, in movies. And I think that's the main thing that we have to watch out for, is that once we get to a certain level, just like the civil rights movement and just getting black equality like the Black Panthers, we get to a point where we are there, and then like J. Edgar Hoover considered the Black Panthers public enemy number one, and the only thing they want to do is feed their community, feed,
Right.
their home sisters and brothers. There was nothing there that really affected the population negatively, except for what if these people began to become just as powerful as us. And I get it. If war was a way of them taking over things and getting America and taking away the land from the Indians, if you never sway from that mentality, you would always fear those who you may see as posed as a threat. And I think with the millennials, since we have not really, even for myself, passed on that heritage onto my kids, it's just been more of a let me give them a life I never had mentality. But you do get to a certain point where you have to prepare them for this is what happens when you come into Frisco or Plano versus Oak Cliff versus, South Dallas. It's a different mentality you have to have, which is, I think it's more conditioned because if you went through that experience once, you don't want your kids to have to go through the same thing that you went through.
Absolutely.
And with the millennials, I think they have an appreciation. I think it just shows with social media how with the video cameras, with news coverage, and then I think now the people who the representatives are governed by the people's voices are now being heard, and now you see how much of an impact to where it's not just black people, it's
Right.
all cultures who are understanding what we've been going through,
Right.
and now from the Middle East, I think I've seen a mural of George Floyd in Syria to Italy, to where those people don't have the same crime levels or medical expenses we have to worry about over here. So they have a great appreciation for what we have, but at the same time, they know nobody deserves to be treated less than human, let alone having someone put their knee in your neck, just like Kaepernick kneeled, and the only thing he was kneeling for was police brutality and stop killing our brothers and sisters. And the millennials, I think, just to answer your question, I think we should be a lot further, but I'm glad that now our voices are being heard versus millennials and all generations.
So I was having a conversation the other day with some colleagues of mine, and one of the things that we were talking about was the progression and regression of slavery, of the slave mindset. And obviously, we are not cracking whips. We're not. People are not walking in ball and chains, and people are not wearing iron collars and things like that. Do you think that? And I want to get on this just for a second. Do you think that this is and I'm talking about all the stuff that's going on. Do you think that the government is still in a slave master mentality and trying to keep a particular culture in a slave type mentality because there's a bigger agenda? Or what is the thing? Because I agree with you. I like where we have come from, but I'm scared of where we're going to. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I like where we're coming from. Obviously, we're not in a place to where we have to walk out and we fear for our life, but yet we walk out and have to fear for our life. And although I have a little bit more liberty to walk around with a concealed weapon, I have little bit more liberty to get more help from other cultures. I have more liberty to get more understanding as opposed to in 1960. But that still doesn't stop the modern day lynchings. It still doesn't stop the
Yeah.
modern day slave type mentality and tactics. And I'm wondering, have we progressed or regressed? You understand what I'm saying? In mindset. I'm talking about in mindset.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think we were progressing to a certain extent, and then there were obstacles put in place that prevented us, that not everybody had to overcome, as far as like say crack cocaine or cocaine in the 70s and 80s. It was more of a luxury thing for the rich and famous, but then for stuff being placed in communities like the ghettos and the hoods, it was more of a means of putting us through things that we are already trying to overcome, poverty and just having normal social conditions. And now you got drugs that can regress not only your family structure, but also your financial structure, to where the money you would have had to pay the bills, now the mom is on the street because she used all the money to buy drugs, and daddy vice versa might be hustling.
Right,
He
right.
might end up dead or shot. So it's almost like you put us in a position where we were slaves. You said we're free, and now you're saying, okay, you know what, let's figure it out. And it was never anything in place for us to make it, and we still thrive and made it by going to school, becoming educated, still trying to live the quote unquote American dream. But then I think once you get to a certain level, it's like even in the federal government, on any job. I remember this one person I worked for, literally at Verizon, and I was temp, and I was applying for a permanent position. And during the job interview, she literally told me this is somebody that went to a black college, pledge and everything, but she didn't identify or didn't appreciate the black culture. Her thing was to make it in this environment. She was like, you can call it a sellout, you can call it a slave, you can call it whatever. In order for you to work here, this is who you have to be.
Right.
And I'm sitting there with her and two white people, and my first reaction was like, oh, hell no. Like, I'm sorry. I love my culture. I love myself too much to even want to even compromise who I am as a person. And for another person, not the white person, but another black person tell me this, I was like, sister, you so lost. And at the same time, you're probably miserable.
Right.
Because if you don't love yourself, how could you tell somebody else to do something that no one could identify that appreciates where they come from, who their parents were, and everything. So I think in the end, it's a mental thing or a mental war where we have regress, not just on systematic things, but then people, you get pressed for so much, and sometimes you want relief. So some people, it might be good to make a little money on the street corner. It might be good just to, I need to feed my kids, and I get it. But then it's like we're the minority.
Right.
I look at it like this: if you take a strip of paper and you write majority white people 1,000, right? Hispanics, blacks, 500, and so on and so forth with each culture, and you strip down 10% across the line of each of those percentages, 10% won't affect 1,000, but the 500 and the other cultures, they'll be eventually affected. So you got less people that aren't available, whether they go to prison, whether they're on drugs,
right,
and so forth. And then it's like there's another obstacle, then another obstacle, another obstacle. Then the ones that make it, those are the ones I hold accountable, because sometimes they're more worried about title as far as representative, being a judge, and then when you ask for them to give back, they look at it as if an authoritarian or like you owe them something. It's like, wow, wait a minute, like you struggle just like me.
So real quickly before I address that too, real quickly, guys, I just want to let you know I'm on the phone with Mr. Ryan Russell. We are still talking about preparing to change the narrative, part two. We are right now we're getting into progression and regression of the slave mindset. But real quickly, and I want to address that real quickly, Ryan. I'm gonna use this term, man. I don't want nobody to get mad at me. So we still have people that still have grown into what we call a house nigga mentality. Is that where we're at? So if you tell me, hey, you moved out the ghetto, or you moved out of the trenches, and now you don't want to deal with anything from the trenches, does that make you a house nigga? I'm just saying.
There's so many terms,
in a sense,
sell out,
right?
Somebody that just
well, we just called it a different. We just called it a different term. We called it sellout, but we understand the historic term for it. And I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that's what we would classify it as. Because so now that goes back to my understanding of regression and progression of the slave mentality, the slave mindset. And that's why I'm nervous about the protest, because even on the protest, is that going backwards? And I'm not knocking it. Once again, I don't want nobody to misunderstand me. I'm not knocking protest. I'm not knocking, the fact that you want your voice to be heard. But once again, we've been trying to get our voice heard for years. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that? We have been pleading and pleading and pleading since 1618. We really have, when slavery started. So at this point, what's the next step? What's the progression? And once again, I'm not saying people don't have agendas out there. Like I say, I take what my wife said to heart. She says, "Hey, baby, listen. There are people doing something. There's people that's writing agendas. It just may not be your people. It may not be people you know." And I understand that.
Yeah.
But I would like to see the strategy. I would like to see the structure. I would like to be made. I would like for the public to know what are the new strategies and training procedures that police officers are now implementing to make sure that we go from rules of engagement to studying escalation and de-escalation. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
Mm-hmm.
as I taught yesterday, rules of engagement is a military tactic. That's a military's. But police officers are called peace officers. So if they're called
Mm-hmm.
peace officers, why would they be trained in military tactics? Your whole thing should be to deal with peace, to promote peace. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
There, there is
I
no
understand.
there is no connection with the military and local police. None whatsoever. The training is different. The mindset is different. The ideology is different. The long-term viewpoints are different. The strategies are different. The structure and implementation process is different. The ranking structure is different. There is no way that local police should be parallel to governmental military. There's no way. And when they're
Exactly.
and when they're operating in a mindset or a tactical procedure like rules of engagement, you are siding yourself with the military. So real quickly, man, we got about 3 to 5 minutes here, Ryan. Man, I appreciate it. Before we go, I want to get on this last topic on the show. So I want to deal with the broader picture of the advancement of African American education. Are we smart enough to be better than where we are? Do you feel
Oh
like,
yeah.
do you think that the
Yeah.
progression of our education? Okay, so let me ask you this. I hear a lot of people talking, but it doesn't seem as if we use a lot of analytics while we talk. We're not using. I don't see. And once again, I'm not knocking those that are trying to stand up and fight for oppression and suppression and I'm not knocking that. But I want to know who's in the boardrooms right now, who's at the table taking notes, and really saying, okay, we're writing down issues and strategies so that we can now take this to the police chief and we can now say, hey, listen, since you guys don't have a strategy, we're bringing a strategy to you. So now we want to partner with you and we want to make sure that our strategy is better. Talk to me about that.
I think the strategy is, I think we have to start relying on things that are broken, and the only thing is put in place is false fillers. Where I don't think we can rely on Republicans or Democrats because you see how the Republicans really don't have our back, and they change the narrative every time an event comes up that shows, hey, the system is broke. And then with the Democrats, we got Hillary Clinton right now is in court over those email
Yeah, I
scandals,
saw that.
which her, yeah, where her emails and some of it is dealing with child trafficking.
Right.
And we're like, wait a minute, you dealing with what? Like, and you supposed to be for us. So it's like, I think we have to have a whole independent branch or create our own party. But as far as a structure and something strategic in place, I think we first have to have elect someone that really is going to have our back and not flip flop depending on who controls the money. Because just like I saw yesterday, Al Sharpton preaching at the memorial
Well,
for
no, he
George
didn't preach.
Floyd,
Wait, let's stop
but
that.
then
He did not preach.
uh,
He didn't
I
preach.
mean, okay, he didn't preach. He
Okay,
was
he didn't
attempting
preach.
to make it a sermon, but it wasn't a sermon.
Right.
It came from a picture. But I was like,
It was not.
you ain't even supposed to be here.
Right. He is not preaching. And this is what kills me about big things. And I'll get on this tomorrow, maybe on Monday, but I mean on Tuesday. But this is what kills me, Ryan, man, about when we allow things like this to get so big that it takes the
Mm-hmm.
normality out of stuff. You know what I'm saying? But listen, man. My producers are telling me we got to wrap up. Man, listen. I wish we had more time in the day, but we'll continue this on next Tuesday, man. If you are free. Um,
Oh
but
yeah.
but listen, man. I appreciate you, man, taking the time. I know you are at work, and once again, I appreciate your perspective. We always have good dialogue, but man, I want you to come back next Tuesday, man, and let's pick up right here because I want to tell people Al Sharpton did not preach. Okay, so let's kill that. All right. That was
Yeah,
not
it
a
wasn't
eulogy.
preaching. It was just feeling with the people emotions, taking
Right, that's
advantage.
all it was. So listen, that's what him and y'all don't want to get me started because some folks don't get mad. Anyway, listen, man, thank you so much. Tell Don I said hello, man, and man, I
Oh yeah.
appreciate you, man, and I'll get back with you next week. Is that cool?
Yes, sir. I'll be available, man. Good talking to you, man.
All right, man. Ryan Russell, folks. Thanks, man. See you later, man.
All right.
All
Later.
right, cool. Hey guys, real quickly, man, I want to thank you guys for joining me today, man. Also, if you would like to be a blessing to this show, man, do me a favor, man. Please, you can send whatever you like, man. Our Cash App, Dr. Holly Mays. Again, Dr. Holly Mays, man, we need it. We are trying to grow and build and bring you content that you can use. But listen, guys, we're talking about preparing to change the narrative, part 2. We dealt with a whole bunch of situations, our mindset, has it regress, progress. Those are some things that we talked about today. Next week, man, on Tuesday, we're going to be dealing with the educational system. We're going to be dealing with the progression of our finances. And can we start our own nation? You know, can we start our own political party? Listen, those are interesting questions and statements and things that we're going to be talking about next week. So, listen, guys, I hope you have a great weekend, man. My final thought, I got to give it to you, man. I got to give it to you. I got to give it to you, man. My final thought is this, man. Listen, we all go through something, okay? We all go through something, right? We all go through something, and we all deal with something. But here's the deal. It's not what we go through, it's how we deal with what we go through, because that's what's going to determine what we're like when we come out of it. So I encourage each and every one of you guys, man, to keep the course, man. Keep the faith, man. Continue to uplift Christ wherever you go. And do me a favor, make the rest of your day the best of your day, man. Until next week, guys, love you guys with the love of the Lord. Peace.